Anyone else still outside the PG room, please come in. Mark, we have a camera set up, so if you can use over here. All right, guys, gather around. It's story time, kids. All right.
And a hush fell over the crowd. You say hush. Let's try it again. And a hush fell over the crowd.
Hush.
This is a phenomenal gathering, and I've got the mic, so I'm going to say something. It's amazing that the co-op is still around after 40 years. And everybody in this room is a testament for that, because people in this room really care about change and care about people and care about the earth and care about children and care about making the world a better place. And I'm really glad it was a part of my life. And we've lost some beautiful people. And I just wanted to say, I know of Ivan Klein and Chris, and Heather's husband, and Henry Abraham, and Patricia Pyle, who was a part of, and Ann Elson, and so I'm
Steve Ladowski.
And so I was thinking we could have a moment of silence and just bring them into this room, because they were a big part of good change as well.
Rest in peace to everyone just mentioned. We're gonna, earlier, before some of y'all were here, we sat down in a circle, we held hands, we did it Monday night meeting style. If we get a chance to bring it back to that in a little bit, we will. But we appreciate your patience. Everything's been organic, it's been loosey-goosey. Now's a great time to start. We've had a lot of patience, and we've got a lot of patience, because some of y'all are sick in the head still. So I'm gonna start it off with Marc Strumpf, who was part of the campaign to get the Maryland Food Co-op started. So round of applause for Marc.
Comrades. So I was the Student Government Association President, 74, 75. So, one thing I've learned over the years is that, in a battle, you kind of only see what's right in front of you. Right? So, oh, we won. No, we lost, or vice versa. So I'm going to give you some of my own perspective, because as Student Government President, I got to see a couple different battlefronts. But what I see isn't necessarily all there is. There's going to be some other speakers that are going to give you their perspective. But I'm going to take you through sort of conception, gestation, fitful birth, and some of the stories that go with that. I have a longer talk, how we won the Maryland Food Co-op and other tales of the student rebellion. That's an hour-ish. We'll try and get that on YouTube so we can document some of the other things going on. With your indulgence, I may just throw in one or two of those things, because I think you have to understand the context that this all happened. This was not an isolated event and part of broader events. So I was elected really on a whim. We were sitting around the dorm. It was kind of, yeah, let's run, And there were established parties. The campus had been in what I would call acquiescence for a couple of years. The anti-war movement was, very active here on campus. There were a lot of confrontations, but there hadn't been for a couple of years. So the slogan, the symbol of my party's running for office was just like the food co-op logo. It was a fist coming out of the grave, and rest in peace, student power, fist coming up. So the logo that was later developed for the food co-op was very similar to that. So I want to talk just a minute about the sandwich part, while mostly I'm going to talk about the fist part. Now I'm going to talk first about the sandwich part. Food was terrible here. There had been a food riot in Cambridge Dining Hall the year before. When I say food riot, it was timed. Every table got turned over. The milk machine got turned over. Windows were broken. Because, by and large, you got sick if you were living in the dormitories after a few weeks. It was all, what's that? You know? Well, it's some kind of meat. Okay, but what kind of meat is it? So, food was an important issue here. There were really three things that sapped the wallet of students: food, books, and records. So I'm going to give you the conception of the conception moment of the food co-op. There's always a transition meeting between the old student government president and the new one. The guy before me was a guy named Don Katz. I'd actually run against him. He wasn't running, but our slogan was, throw the bums out. I mean, literally the slogan was, throw the bums out. But he was very gracious, and I met with him, we talked about a transition. I want to give him kudos for something. Now, any lawyers here, if statute of limitations hasn't been exceeded, and a few things I'm going to mention, you give me a little signal, okay? But I had heard that he and another person had actually burglarized the chancellor's office. And they had stolen the budget for the school, which was always very hush-hush. They mimeographed it, and they passed it out on the street corner. Full of slush funds, full of kickbacks. It was a big deal. A whole house of cards came tumbling down because he did that. So, even though they came from the Greek campus culture, that's a very artificial kind of thing, they had their heads in the right places. So at that meeting, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anything about the budget because we had run on, once again, let's run. And we were kicked back to the older generation of the anti-war activists on campus. So he said, well, if I were you, I would have establishment of co-ops on campus, student-run co-ops, as your top priority. Yeah. There had already been, some interest in establishing co-ops. There had been another co-op, the Ho Chi Minh Record Co-op. Remember that? Which had existed for about a year and a half, 2 years, but was gone by the time I had showed up. So there was a lot of interest in forming co-ops. And yeah, sure, let's do that. And that's when we formulated the strategy of how we're going to win the food co-op. I was then eventually taken to a meeting with the chancellor and the other administrators, and they wanted to hear, well, Mark, what's your plan for the year? I said, well, we want three things. Right? We want a book co-op, we want a record co-op, and we want a food co-op. Okay? Now, we had already researched book co-ops, and we knew we couldn't do it. That's a very textbook business, extremely complicated. You have to have the cooperation of the school. It wasn't going to happen. But we didn't let them in on that. We, kind of faked it. And I said, no, we really want that book co-op. Oh, no, you can't have a book co-op. That's not going to. No, we really have our heart set on a book co-op. No. Tell you what, Mark. We'll give you the record co-op. No, we really want the book. We'll give you you can have a record co-op. And how about a food co-op? Oh, no, you can't have that. So that was the agreement. We said, all right, fine, no book co-op. We're going to get a record co-op, and we're not giving another food co-op. We still want it. So we knew we could do it. So we walked out of that meeting laughing. I don't know if Tom was still there or not, but we walked out. We totally snookered down. We knew we couldn't have a book co-op. We walked out with the record co-op, and the food co-op was still on the table. Now I'm going to take a step back and mention one other event that happened on campus right about that time. The state police came onto campus around 2, 3 in the morning and arrested 36 students right out of their beds from the dormitory on marijuana charges. They were arresting people on possession, conspiracy to possess. They had mentioned it, in other words. There had apparently been narcs planted for some time all through the dormitories. Well, why did they do this? Marvin Mandel, who was governor, wanted to show he was cleaning up drugs on campus. It was a totally bogus operation, But can you imagine, boom, 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 middle of the night, kids getting pulled out of their beds. When I say kids, these are like 18 and we're kind of older now, 18 and 19 and 20-year-old kids pulled out of the bed and thrown into jail. Well, the campus exploded the next day. I've been student government president for, a day and a half, and they go, Mark? Okay. So the campus the mall was filled again, just like it had been a few years prior. There was a lot of upset over it. Once again, I get called into the chancellor's office. So they sat me down and they said, Mark, we have National Guard right off campus. If any students come anywhere near Route 1 again, well, we wouldn't want to have another Kent State. Excuse me? Threatening to shoot students is like me threatening to burn down this administration building. And you know something? I have a lot more power to get this building burnt down than you do to shoot students. So let's cut the crap and talk about how we're going to move forward. I don't know if Todd was there for that. He might have been. So, I'll make that very long story short. They were going to march on the police station and release the students. Probably wasn't going to happen. But there was a furious rain the next day. There's a little more to it than just that. But the whole thing kind of dwindled. Well, what that started was a series of events of a feud between the governor's office and the district attorney's office that ran all through the year. And so that was kind of the context of the food co-op, was that we're constantly fighting with the district attorney. Mandel showed up on campus some months later like a dog marking territory, as well. You're supposed to escort him around campus. And I think what they were trying to do was bait me into just doing something juvenile or ridiculous. So I didn't do that. I put on a nice coat and my turtleneck and I brushed it. My hair was, by the way. I was 115 pounds and I looked like a troll.
Your toes furry?
Yeah. So Mandel comes to campus and I'm supposed to guide him around, and I guess they were setting me up to do something stupid. Instead, it was like a Civil War battlefield tour. I walked them around and said, all right, so the National Guard, they would line up there, and they would shoot the tear gas. You see this hill over here, Governor? So we would retreat back and go behind the chapel. So it was like a battlefield tour. Okay, that's basically what I gave him. So he wasn't happy. He wasn't happy at all. So back to the food co-op. So the summer goes by. Let me mention something about student organizing. You only have a short amount of time when you're a student organizer. Why? Yeah, graduated. Okay? Or you're out. I had 1 year to stay in office. So if you lose a couple months out of that little time in office, there's no time to get things like the food co-op done. So what we did was, we stayed on campus that summer, passed our budget, got all the paperwork done for the next year, so we wouldn't be encumbered for the first 2 months of the semester and not be able to accomplish anything. The Board of Regents meet during the summer, and they were going to pass a tuition hike, and they were going to fire teaching assistants. So I said, is there a lawyer that they would all recognize, that the Board of Regents would recognize? If he walked in, they know exactly who he was. So I got a name. I go to the guy's office and say, Student Government Association wants to hire you. By the way, I had a $26,000 personal budget. You do the math. That's like 100 and something thousand today. We want to hire you. We want to put you on retainer. I want you to go to the Board of Regents meeting with me. So, okay, well, I'll be happy to do that. And how would you like me to advise you? And they go, no, we're good. I just want you to be with me at the Board of Regents meeting. So we did that. He sits next to me. He passes me notes. He whispers in my ear. He goes up and shakes hands because they all recognize him. No tuition hike, no cuts in teaching assistants. So now we're back in school. Everything is funded. I have this money to put into the food co-op. So now the food co-op gets going. It starts setting up clandestinely around campus. Especially here in the student union. We're kind of on the spot where one of the main rooms was, as far as I can reckon. This has all been redone since we went here. So what would happen would be Todd, and I have to give kudos to Matt Mayer and Todd Steiner and Pat McCann were, you know, this would not exist. I'm kind of generally, we are to invade the North. They're more like Pickett, you know, let's go. So they're the guys taking the risks and figuring out how all this gets done. So they would set up clandestinely, take a bullhorn, walk outside, and the food co-op is now open. I would take the guy from the front desk, you know the intern on 30 Rock? Well, the kid's something like, Mark, I don't think this room has been registered to you properly. Really? I meant to register. He put his arm around him, and we'd walk away. Well, they would set up very quickly the food co-op. Students would come in and get served sandwiches, and it would be taken down. So that's how the food co-op operated in 1970, 1975, until everything came to a head when the food co-op set up in the Mackey machine room, which was downstairs. So I talked about conception. Well, this is kind of birth. So the school had a contract with the Mackey vending machine company, and to sell any other kind of food in their room was a violation of the contract. Okay? So that was really a verboten thing to do. I mean, what do we know? So the cops show up, the vice chancellor shows up, and the head cop comes up to me and goes, Mark, if you don't take this down right now, you're under arrest.
Bring it on.
So I'm thinking, really? You're going to arrest me? You're going to throw the student government president in a cell over the food co-op? Wonderful. No. That mall that we filled up, you know, last year it's going to be filled up. It's going to be filled up again. Want to make a martyr out of me? You go right ahead. There was a waterfall of cursing, assuming the position waited. Waterfall of cursing. Then they call over the vice chancellor. He cursed some more. I'm just standing there in the position, okay? Then they broke. I was like, God damn it, okay. They sent Matt Mayer, and I'm pretty sure Todd, into a side room, and they negotiated a temporary lease. Okay? So that was really the moment where it ceased being an illegal operation, and became at least, you weren't going to get arrested for sending up the food co-op, given the small room. Right, so last thing, I'm going to fast forward to the next year. I'm out of student government at that point, but I'm still active. I'm living with Todd right off campus. They reneged on the lease. So now we're canceling the food co-op lease. If you're, well, I'm out of office, things will fall off a little bit. They weren't going to extend the lease. So, all right, what are we going to do? We knew that the phone in the Student Government Association office was tapped. And we've always used that against them. Okay? They weren't the bribes. So we got on, what we do was a tap phone and talked about occupying the building. Okay? We knew our apartment was being watched because there was a guy, sat in the parking lot watching the apartment in Delphi, and we called the PG cops on him once, and they all, got out their badges. I don't know what they did, but they were all friends, and the guy stayed there. So we went to hardware stores and bought lumber and nails and gas masks at Ranger Supply, and that company very publicly started parading all that stuff into our apartment. So we knew that they would see that. Okay. One of the better points of generalship that I just want to repeat for the last time in my life was which building to occupy. The Skinner building had been occupied during the anti-war days, just a couple of years before this. Skinner, 86, we knew some of those people. And I think that's probably where it was going to go. But I walked around, and I'm looking at different buildings, and I said, the computer building. Now, computers back then were gigantic, and they were temperature controlled, and they were very delicate. and you would have punch cards. You'd see students walking on campus, these punch cards with a rubber band around them. They can't tear gas the computer building. They can't do anything to the computer building. They lose millions, literally millions of dollars. Once again, $1975. Okay? So I thought that was a very good move. So all this was openly discussed on the tap phone. They saw us bringing all the supplies into our apartment, getting ready for an occupation, all very so they could see it, and they caved. Okay? So Todd got a call, it was Todd, and they negotiated a permanent lease. We had other demonstrations. There was one a couple just before that where everyone got rakes and pitchforks and staves, and it was like marching on the Bastille, marched down the mall towards the administration buildings, towards the TV. So some other people can tell you about some of those. So that was really the birth of the permanent food co-op, and that's really the anniversary we're celebrating. Today was a 1976 permanent lease, but there was a temp lease before that, and all the struggle. I'm going to end on one last thing. So again, I'm talking more about the fist part than the sandwich part. So the idea of the food co-op was student power, as well as filling the need for better food. My part was more about independent student power. So we were going to take this idea and broaden it out. The National Student Association had been infiltrated by the CIA. No, not the FBI, the CIA. Okay? It was illegal. They can't do operations domestically, but they did anyway. It's a big, big scandal. But every university was part of that. Okay? So I decided to run for president of the National Student Association after I left student government here, right on the heels of that scandal. Once again, to make a very long story short, I lost, but just barely. We formed something called the National Student Union. And the idea was there would be like a lobbying kind of thing, be one big union of all students through the country. So we could act at the same time, and we wouldn't be dependent. We even had the idea that we would collect the tuitions from students, hold them, and then pay it out. We had heard this is what's been done in Scandinavia. It's like, I don't know how we got that idea. But that was the extension of the food co-op idea, this cooperative model we wanted to take and expand politically. And it was actually going for a while. There were several good schools, UCLA, Brown, Swarthmore, UMass, University of Maryland. The Maryland Student Union met a few times. The community colleges, the other Maryland campuses, and us, and it was going for a year or two and pooped out. But I want you to know that that end of things also tried to be developed in a broader, political way. So I just want to end with, there were a lot of people absolutely crucial to this. I want to, before I get off, mention a few of the names. Matt Mayer was really the honcho of this. And without Matt, there would not have been a food co-op. Todd Steiner and Pat McCann, right behind. And then there was the support of a lot of people who, recently had just come back from Vietnam. Gerhard, who is here today, Don Stiles, these were Vietnam veterans. Okay, well, we were just kind of kids. But these guys, combat, right? So that kind of toughened us up a little bit. It was kind of a different deal than, than some other years, and we weren't taking any crap at that point. So, all right. So thank you very much. I'll be around.
Just to give everyone an idea about our time, I think our next band goes on at 5:30. It's 5:03. So we wanted to have Pat McCann come up. Yeah! And then Pat, speak as long as you want in that time. If there's time after that, we want it organic, or anyone else from the early years wants to pop up, can. But then after that band and our resume of our schedule thing, we're going to come back and we're going to talk more like this later. So hang out as long as you can. Matt, did you also want to say something now before the next break? Did anyone else that we talked about? Okay, let's start with Pat.
Yeah, we're just going to let Todd have a few things to say here first. By the way, I'm Patrick now.
Patrick.
So how do you do? I'm Todd. You know what they say, if you can remember it, you weren't really there. So I have a slightly different spin from Mark. The food co-op was definitely born out of student struggle, and that was really what we were. The co-op was the center of radical politics during the mid-70s on campus. Whatever was going on, it emanated out of the food co-op. But the stories I remember was Matt Mayer. So they froze money for the food co-op, so we laundered some of it. I'd give a talk and they'd pay me $100. Matt would give a talk until we had enough money to buy some food. Matt Mayer would go out and buy the food. He'd show up at Pat's house. My parents lent me a slicer, and we would make sandwiches all night. We'd show up out here. Someone with a sandwich order would say, "The food co-op's in room 223 today." And he would just take over a room and start, peanut butter sandwiches were a quarter. We were serving bologna and salami. We didn't come out of the organic movement at the time. But before it was all over, we were vegetarians. And we would just take over different rooms, and the cops would show up and say, "You can't do this." And we'd say, "Fuck you, there's 100 people lined up here or something." And so we eventually did, after taking over the Mackey room, that's what I remember was a turning point.